So welcome to all of you to our new edition of Leaders Who Have Something to Say. This is the place to get inspired with leaders, outstanding leaders, I should say, actionable advice. And today we have one of the outstanding leaders that I love to bring for you. I'm Mariana Ferrari, and I'm going to be your host today. With us, Amsi Jackson, our executive producer in the control room. And our guest today, Adolfo Ramirez Escudero, who's the CEO of CBRE in Spain and Portugal. Now, Adolfo is far from being an atypical CEO who solely focuses on profit margins, which he does, of course, as every CEO should do, but he's an inspiring CEO who will share his 4-piece roadmap to lead in the 21st century. Adolfo, it is such a pleasure to have you here with us today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Mariana. I'm very, very glad to be here with you and all the audience.
Thanks. So yes, and let's not forget that I hope that you're here down on the chat, ready to fire your questions and comments for Adolfo. So let's begin by, if you don't mind, do we have to outline and cover your 4Ps and then we'll go into each one of them, or should we play a game with the audience and ask them to kind of discover what each P is about? What do you say?
I love playing games.
You love playing games? Okay. Okay, so I do hope that you are all ready to play a game with us today and that you have your keyboard at hand, because the game is going to be like this. And it's an interesting game, I should say. It's an interesting game because, as every game, has a reward at the end, which I love. We would ask you to discover and put on the chat at least one of the Ps, at least the first one, the second one. It doesn't need to be in order, of course, but you know that Adolfo has 4 to share with you. So I'm going to give you one tip, and it is that each one of the 4 Ps that he has to share with you, there are 4 Ps of things or some things that we value a lot today in life. So 4 Ps about things we value. Now, I have to do a little disclosure here. If any CBRE team member is present on the chat, you cannot write and type because that would be cheating, and we don't like cheating. Now, for the ones that, if someone discovers all 4 Ps, 1, 2, 3, 4, then they will enjoy a chat with Adolfo on the side, a mentoring session or a conversation hand in hand with Adolfo. How about that? What do you say, Adolfo?
Well, that will be a prize for me.
It will be a prize for you. Well, if you just heard what he said, you might be discovering what his first P is about. I mean, we should say that, I was going to say that it's about things that we value, and because you and I are in Spain right now, do you think the first P would be something to do with the tortilla, for example?
with a lot of potatoes, you mean?
Yes, with a P for potatoes. I don't think so, right?
No, not even close.
No, but if he enjoys talking to people, what do you think it is the first P? Now, Mar, who's here taking control of the chat, you let us know if we got any comments or questions. I should say that because we have a delay, then maybe we should start by addressing the first P. What do you say? The first one is the one I love.
Let's walk the walk. So should I say the first P for us is the most important one of all, which is people. That's where everything starts.
People first.
People first.
Great. So thank you for that. People first. Now you cannot type people there unless you did it before, but we'll check. But Adolfo, indisputably today, leaders need to upgrade themselves to lead in the 21st century. Now, within that first P, you also have another acronym that we were talking or discussing before, which are 3 I's. Can you share your people strategy for us? Because the one thing that I love from you is that you're not here to say the what should people do, but you're going to share how you're doing it.
Yeah, the 3 I's really develop, around purpose. We need to define a collective purpose, and then we need to align with personal purpose. We like to think that we would like everybody, each one of the employees to be inspirational, to have aspirations, and to be influential in its environment, which will help to make others better, and collectively have a better goal in our aim that we want to deliver.
So within the people, we have the purpose on one hand, and then you said inspirational, aspirational, and influential. Did you say?
Correct.
Okay.
Influential.
So those are the 3 I's. Great. So why do you think leaders need to be inspirational, aspirational, and influential? I mean, today we're going through an era where people are resigning, they're quitting their bosses, not their jobs, right? So how does those 3 I's come into play with the Great Resignation, with employee engagement? How does it work?
Well, it works naturally, and I think we all experience in our day-to-day. The ones who have kids, for example, is a great reference always. I think we live in a constantly changing world, fast-paced changes we cannot sometimes even cope with. So we really need to focus on the foundations, and with the strong foundations, together with the strong values, then people can perform and overperform. So if you instill, a foundation of trying to inspire others, inspire yourself first, but then trying to inspire others, you deliver positive energy. If you aspire, to go beyond, to become a world-class company, to be a world-class player of what you do, then you set the objectives at the right tone. And then, of course, it cannot remain at a conceptual level. It has to become something that it's acted upon things and upon people. So you need to influence others, and that's the way you sort of deliver the intention into specific outcomes.
Great. So yeah, I always say that you cannot be a leader if you're not an influential person, because I mean, what is a leader with no influence? Can we call that person a leader, or should we call that person a boss or a role, whatever his or her role is in the company? But yeah, influence, it's so important. And I think that aspiration and inspiration are like kind of 2 things that are ingrained to become influential. So thank you for that. So people first, I love that. And we have a program with people first. And we have to say that on the chat, there are 2 people, one that that guessed the people as your first P. One is Natalia Torre, the CEO of Shell in Spain. And the other one, hang on, let me check, because I need to go to the chat. I read Maria Los Ángeles Moreno. So thank you for your comments here. Now, let's go to your next P. What is your next P, Adolfo?
So next P, it's closer to what we do, which is properties. And this is pretty much, once you have great people, you have to be good at something. You have to aspire to do something really great in order to have influence around you. And in our company, we work in a specific industry that relates to space, relates to the physical aspect of built environments in which we live, in which we play, in which we work. And of course, this concentrates in specific buildings or in specific places. So property is pretty much the foundation of what we do. and we operate to curate spaces to create great properties.
So I wanted to ask you about that because CBRE is a world leader in office space specifically, and the evolution of how we work and what office space looks like right now is somehow figuratively and literally removing doors and walls. And I say, so the C-suite becomes part of the tribe. Maybe that's kind of my analogy. But you as a world leader in office space, where we spend so much time, so much time of our lives, it is something that is really important. So as a leader, what do you think it's next for people to go back to the offices, which, they're kind of doubting if they want to go back or not. So what's next? What's coming next?
Well, COVID, we've said this many times, and I think it's a bit of a topical, but it's absolutely true. COVID has accelerated changes that were pretty much already there, were happening. And it has just forced an acceleration and sometimes a realization about, what we need office for. What is really making the difference when we talk about the place where we work? And we have realized that we don't have to work all the time in one place. In fact, it was a long time ago that we were already working on the go, in planes, in places very different to the traditional office space. So COVID has accelerated. We have realized that we can work, for a long time quite productively outside the office. But I think it has also helped to realize that actually we work most of the times better in an office. Why? Because an office, it's designed and thought to create high performance environments to work together. So you could ask why you wouldn't work in an office, as it is designed, it is curated in order to enhance your productivity. Then the next question is how we need to adapt the traditional office, which has not changed so much in 100 years, right, into the 21st century in order to live up to our expectations.
So what changes are we going to see? I think that there are many things coming. At least I'm putting together many different things. One is the people that, that we spend many hours in office spaces that we did very well. And that I believe that when we had the pandemic, many people just, were wishing that they could go back to the office soon.
Absolutely.
Some of them not every day, that we're living in hybrid work right now. But those office spaces also, I think, or I believe that many of the employees do not like those boxes of people like chickens, putting like one next to the other. Is that going to be the office space of the future, or how is that office space going to look like? Is it going to be adapted to people?
It's going to change, and it's changing already. If you look at the traditional office space, as you have described, it looks like a factory. In fact,
absolutely,
it's a bit of a Taylorist 19th century approach, to mass production and to high specialization, but probably not high quality, environment in order to foster creativity and to foster interaction. Mm-hmm. Now that we have a real option to have hybrid work, actually, what we are focusing is on curating spaces where interaction is more effective, where we can socialize, when we can foster creativity, as I said, where if we need to interact with the help of technology, we have the best resources possible, in order for the technology to be at its best shape, in order to enhance the experience as well. And I think that, of course, that implies changes. At the same time, I know that you are going to ask me about health and healthy employees, healthy people. Yes. Obviously, COVID was a health crisis, very, very dramatic one. But of course, we attended the virus impact, but sometimes maybe we don't know fully the impact of the psychological aspect of being isolated.
Yes.
And we have learned by experience how much we were missing, the social aspect of work. All the good things that happen when we are together, designing a product, solving problems, reinforcing each other, rewarding, each other. That's appreciating each other. All those things are fundamentally very much intrinsic to our nature. So we feel at a very odd space when we are confined in a space, even if we can see little faces on a screen, because that is not exactly the same. It can be a substitute, and a good substitute or a good complement, but it cannot be permanent. So we are trying to make the office a place you want to be, not you need to be. It's basically the square where everybody wants to meet and where the magic happens.
That's nice. Maybe 10 years from now, it would be like our playground, the place that we want to go to just be relaxed, and then we'll work at home or from home, and then we'll go to the office to socialize with our peers. I mean, why not?
Well, why not? And look, of course, it's a high performance space. So it is, talented people want to perform and want to deliver great outcomes. Part of it is about the social interaction, and part of it is also sometimes concentration. We just need to, to work out the right mix in the spaces to do all these activities, which, not every day is similar to the next one. We have different agendas, different tasks to do. So that is part of the art that we do when we talk about properties. When we talk about people, but when we talk about properties, how can we, talking about specifically workplaces, we will talk about maybe retail places or other or hotels or other aspects of property. But when we talk specifically about office, how can we help people to work better, to work healthier, to work in a much more productive way, which obviously creates better outcomes, which creates better attitude.
You know that on the chat, we have a comment from Gerald Hammond, who says, great point about socializing creativity. And I'm pointing this one comment out because Gerald Hammond, he's an innovator. He's the most connected person on LinkedIn. I mean, really the most connected one in the world, not figuratively, but in reality. And Gerald he created the Thinkubator in Chicago. The Thinkubator was a space, a very specific space, where companies would go to do innovation activities, creativity workshops and things for in-company workshops, but they use that space. So he recently sold it, but I do think that somehow you need to be connected, because I think that Gerald knows a lot of, and he's working on a book about the future of meetings. So, all of those pieces together, I think that it's an interesting thing for you. And then Natalia comments performance as another P. Let's see if she wins or not. Don't just say anything yet. Let's keep it there. So let's talk about the following P, the third one, which is one that intrigues me a lot, I should say.
Well, I think if people listen carefully, I think we have already given some hints. The third P, it's places, and places. As you see, we are going from a more specific, the person at the center, a humanistic approach, to actually what we do around that. So we talk about spaces, for different uses that become places. What we mean by places, my industry, the real estate industry, we have been a bit egocentric or a bit selfish by really focusing a lot into the specific buildings we were building, we were providing. And it was a bit of a sort of a production approach more than a sort of a fulfilling approach to the customer needs or to the people needs.
I would say a holistic approach. That's
correct. Better word. And the recognition that every building, every amount of the space with a purpose, it's only what it is because it's part of a wider ecosystem. And actually, a lot of the benefits that property has, which is its location, it relates to the benefits of externalities of the environment around it. being other buildings and, obviously being the natural environment and being, the relationships with all these units. So we wanted really to have aspiration and to be influential as well, and to inspire others by thinking a bit wider. This might sound super obvious to a lot of people now, but actually it is a bit of a revolution in our sector, because it was much more concentrated on, building great office buildings or building great residential buildings, but so much not paying enough attention about what it meant or what it means, in sort of the total ecosystem and what's the impact for it, because the life cycle of real estate, of built environment, is very long. It's going to stay probably longer than we are going to stay. Definitely some architects that did some buildings, they are not anymore here. So we need to have a social responsibility as well in terms of what is going to be the impact of this, not for every building only, but for the whole city, neighborhood, and interaction with the environment. So by thinking about places, obviously through designing properties, we have a wider aspiration and a bigger impact in what is going to be the fourth pillar.
Adolfo, and at CBRE, I know that you participate in the design that you collaborate with some organizations on the design of cities. So how do you see cities changing now and the future? Are we still going to have those huge mega cities like New York, for example, very crowded, that we have to look up to see if, if it rains, if we don't feel it yet? So is that going to be the trend, or how is that trend going to be?
Well, when we talk about our places, obviously we focus quite a lot in cities, no? Cities, it's going to be 2 out of 3 people are going to live in cities by 2050, according to a UN study. Most of the new employment, most of the economic activity happens in cities or around cities, and actually most of people live in cities as well. So it is very relevant. It's very relevant when you talk about space. If you think about it, there's a great book called The Power of Geography, which relates to this topic. If you think about how everything is changing, talent is mobile, capital is mobile, data is mobile, everything changes so fast. But actually, what doesn't change, or at least changes slower, it's the territory. It's the built environment, it's the cities. So if you can work that as a lever, either at the property level by making greater offices, or at an aggregate level by making better cities, more impactful cities, then you can influence, and I take the I, you can influence on the outcome. So it is sort of we live in a fast and a slow world, no? And I think the territory, an intelligent territory, allows for that very fast pace of change to have some anchor, to have some something that you are going to find that is there, and that kind of influence your everyday life. If that makes sense to you, Maya.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what I'm thinking? As you know, I lived in many cities around the world, and I believe that there's one thing that Spain, not only Madrid, but Spain, but especially I would say Madrid, can teach, if that's, not such a big word, but it can teach the rest of the world about socializing and about Madrid being, and here we should have your executive director, Paloma, the Queen of Madrid, talk about Madrid, but yes, but Madrid is the capital of Spain, but at the same time, it's like small cities within the city, small places, getting your word, within the city. And on the other hand, I believe that it is such a social city and a social environment that how can we export that? And you can say, I don't know, I have no idea. I mean, but would it be worth thinking about it? How can we export that knowledge or that ingrained behavior that people in Madrid have and share with the rest of us that we're not from Spain, about being social, about living in small places of the city that everybody knows you immediately. It's amazing, really.
No, I mean, of course, we have to, to think about it and actually to extract some of the characteristics of great cities in order to plan, the expansion of those cities or the new cities that are going to come. No? And actually, that is happening. There is science around that. There are some patterns that are pretty much constant. We talk now about the 15-minute city, no? Mm-hmm. I think that's a good way to frame that actually cities, it's large populations, it's wide territories. So you need to make them human. In order to make them human scale, you need to have at 15-minute reach, walking distance, sort of the basic services and needs and social interactions and greenery that gives a human dimension. So we need to probably build the city or rethink city sometimes in order to make it versatile and integrated into all the basic elements that make a great neighborhood, a great place. And I think Madrid, in that sense, has this, this unique places you can recognize, combined with great culture, great history, and a lot of good experience as you leave the city, And that happens in many other cities, especially in European cities, which some of the newer cities that maybe have been built in Asia or to some extent in the US, maybe have tried to imitate, not always with the same success, because they have been missing some elements. And then you see that the balance is compromised. And then you see that it's not such a healthy environment. And then it probably is not as competitive in many aspects for people.
Yes. And you know what? I'm thinking that the human being, the one thing that we need is that sense of belonging. Mm-hmm. And with right now, or ever since 2010, the migration and immigration, became something so big of the population. How the population migrates. The other day, I was listening to the radio here in Madrid, and they were saying that 1 in every 4 people do not live in the province where they were born. And I thought, well, that's still not a lot. There's a lot of migration within countries and immigration from one country to the other one. So cities, the 15-minute city that you were mentioning, could be a better place of belonging for people that, like myself, that I migrated to Madrid 8 months ago, and I already feel that this is my place. I already feel I belong to this little neighborhood where I live.
Yeah.
Where I lived 12 years in Miami, and I never felt that during 12 years, So there's something there that we should explore on how to export it from Madrid. I'm leaving that up to you.
Absolutely. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. But another thing, Mariana, that we are working quite hard, we have big conviction on it, is it is very normal to understand that the company needs to have a strategic plan. And we are talking a bit about our 4 Ps. Of course, a company is a complex ecosystem. It's a lot of people doing different things, but trying to align to a common goal. When you talk about a city, it is rare to hear that there is a strategic plan for a city. But of course, it is needed as well. And the impact, it is sometimes compounded to the impact of companies, or people, because, it's a major aggregation of activity. So we are working very hard in trying to put the foundations of very sound frameworks, very sound strategic thinking on how cities need to be in the next 30 years. Because if we invest in that now, and we put a framework, and by the way, cities is not just the municipalities, it's the regions, it's the metropolitan regions, and the interaction of the built environment with the natural environment. So cities is not only the buildings, it is everything included. Right. Very, very important. So if you put the right framework with the right term, because you cannot think in cities in years are seconds, for cities, you have to really put thought about it. And all these things that we recognize now can be replicated, or at least, elaborated, if you do the right approach to it. And that's part of our approach to inspire, aspire, and influence the leaders that, govern cities, but also the inhabitants of the cities as well.
Great. So, Adolfo, do you think we should move to the last P?
Absolutely, as you
Yes.
wish.
Yes,
And
because this is a P that everybody would love. So I let you introduce it, and then I'll ask you my question.
Well, the last P is our common house, no? Our common home is the planet. Once we have started to to think wider and to think bigger, we have to recognize that we live in a relatively limited space when you put it in context. Yeah. That we keep growing, and that it is expected to be 2 billion more in 100 years or so, and it is we are testing the limits to some extent. We are testing the limits. We are stretching, the natural boundaries of what our planet can endure, and that is not very wise, because if we stretch the limits of the place we live, we might be uncomfortable because we would not be as happy living in it. So we know the consequences. So as a real estate company, but also as a company that wants to have a purpose that goes beyond real estate as well, we have really thought deeply about what is the impact that our activity has, and how we can basically do a very simple approach, which is how we can give back to the planet more than we take from the planet.
That's something beautiful. How can we give back to the planet more than we take from the planet? Do you think that's something that we can accomplish?
It's a very hard task, and it's definitely a highly aspirational task.
Yes,
but it's something that we don't have an option not to do, especially when we talk about the basic balance and equilibrium of a natural system. If we keep, amplifying the emissions of CO2, we know what is going to happen. So we are stretching the basic levels of what is the composition of air, what is the normal composition of the ecosystem. So we need to reestablish that. If we are going to use the energy that we have, it has to be renewable. We have to be used in a way that the system can cope. If we are going to build, of course, we can build, because we need to provide shelter, and we need to provide something where we can have activity, but we have to do it in a way that we don't kill biodiversity, that we don't kill natural systems that do services for the planet, but also for us as living species.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm sorry. You were going to say something else. No, I was thinking, as you were saying, as you were talking about fossil fuels, how this war on Ukraine right now is showing us that not only the planet can decide not to stop giving us what we're taking, so irresponsibly taking, but also it should be a wake-up call for everybody that we cannot depend on fossil fuels that are limited and that they belong to different countries. I mean, if Germany at this precise time had more energy, then they would not be so dependent in Russia.
Look, we are talking about, assets that are common, that we use together. That is complex. I think the first way to start to such a complex task is to make people aware about what we are talking about. In my company, in CBRE, we have started with a very simple task, with a very simple action, which is to start educating people, to start making people aware. And we have started first with the leaders, because they have more influence allegedly to the rest. But of course, we are going to cascade down to the rest of all the teams. And we will be ambassadors as well in that communication. We have 200 people, 200 directors now, directors, top directors doing the Cambridge certificate on sustainability. And doing that, you learn about the data, you learn about the facts, you have awareness about what are the implications, because this is a long-term impact, and it doesn't happen very fast, but it has high consequences. And I think we need to make it more present now, and we need to start doing actions now in order to offset that trend. So educating people, making aware about the situation. There are fantastic documentaries, there's fantastic resources in the webpage. It is important, but then it's not enough. Then you have to put action on that. Talking a bit about how we are, because I know you want to make actionable insights. How are we doing on our side? For example, we have a big footprint of property that we manage for investors and for owners. Is 2,000 million square meters around the planet, either offices, industrial warehouses, shopping centers. If we take seriously the impact on CO2 emissions of this footprint, which we do, and we have put a pledge to be zero neutral in 2040, not only for the assets we occupy as a company, but we are the assets that we manage for third parties. Wow. So saying we are not going to manage properties that are not net zero compliant in 2040. So we are taking responsibility, and we are trying to influence by taking action in order to do that, if that makes sense.
And possibly influencing and educating also the companies that will rent those spaces and that you manage. So yeah, that's great. Now, you and I have long discussed the need to make sustainability financially sustainable for companies. Yes. I mean, in order to be a corporate priority, it needs not to be a center of costs, but a center of profits.
Correct.
How do we do that?
Well, we like to say solving problems is a good business.
That's a great insight. Very simple, very powerful. Thank you so much. Yes, solving problems, it's a great business. Absolutely.
And this is a big problem. And this is an impactful problem. Not an easy task to do, but as every complex problem, we just need to start working around it, trying to simplify in different actions, and trying to put all these actions in one common goal. Because it is a big problem, and because it has high impact, it has also high payback. So what we are seeing, thank God, we are seeing actually that the most sophisticated investors, that the most sophisticated global firms, that the most sophisticated talent are reacting very positively to this, putting a premium to this purpose, because actually it is the intelligent thing to do. So it is translating into also a profitable business to do. It has to be seen that sustainability from the financial perspective, so a profit-making activity, it has to be seen also, in a long-term basis, because some of the platforms we need to build, some of the changes we need to do maybe won't pay back, in a very short-term view, because they will need to be deployed. For example, some of the technologies that we are talking about, some of the materials that we need to, to sometimes create, sometimes adapt, they will take time sometimes to get it done. Maybe they are already there, but they will take time to be produced at the right cost level. So that's why we need to be clever how we finance those transitions collectively and individually. But the impact at the end game is, a sustainable planet, which is in the interest of everyone. So people are happy to fund that, because basically they are betting on the well-being. So it's a big game.
Yes, you left me thinking with that. Yes, there are so many new problems to solve. So there are so many new opportunities, business opportunities, and sustainable business opportunities. So I love that. Yeah.
Imagine only renewable energy solutions, which we are very good at in Spain, or construction solutions, which we are very good. We are probably top 3 in the world in terms of construction, but we cannot keep constructing the way we used to. We need to recognize that there is a CO2 footprint embedded in construction, and that we need to reduce the production process, or to modify the production process in order to reduce the emissions that take place in that production. That is possible technically, and actually being on the leading edge of these solutions, being the Amazons or the Googles or the Apples of the construction, in order to comply with this revolution, will pay back. No doubt about that.
Absolutely. That I like to say that you are one of the leaders that I know that you walk the talk. And I would like to share with the audience one thing that you did that I celebrated a lot, and was naming your CFO, who's also in charge of compliance and legal in the company, as the responsible person for ESGs. Now, why do I think this is relevant? Because when you pair compliance, finance, and ESGs all together, you know that CBRE is not greenwashing the planet or greenwashing the problems, especially when you appoint someone like Patricia, which, through her, we got to know each other. But regardless of the person, that she's outstanding, I think it was your outstanding move and the way that you proved to the world that you walk the talk. And that's why for me, it was so important to have you here and to portray you and show you to the world so other leaders can follow your walk, because I do think you do walk the talk.
Thank you, Mariana. Well, it's a matter of consistency, Basically, you cannot really try to influence on people or make a change happen if you are not ready to make it yourself. So you need to deliver the vision in your own skin, and obviously having someone that is in charge of the finance, that is in charge of the compliance, or that is in charge of the operations. It's going to be super influential, and it's a person that our clients recognize and have empathy with, because basically they are talking peer to peer about how you approach that challenge in your own company, and we are doing it ourselves as we speak. We don't have all solutions as a corporation. We need to do a lot of changes to become net zero, and then once we do that, then we need to do a step beyond and influence and even limit our service approach in order to deliver service on clients and buildings that are committed to that goal. So all that happens with a lot of effort, a lot of commitment, and it has to start with yourself. Otherwise, it is impossible.
Absolutely. But not everybody's so coherent as you are, I have to say. And, I'm always with leaders, surrounded with leaders, and not everybody's so coherent. So I love you for that. I thank you for being here. And I want to share some of the comments that we have, if you don't mind.
Of course.
And then we'll let you go. So Karine, she comments, many of us don't have good spaces to work at home. Perhaps companies could help us create those home spaces too. Some companies send stipends, but no expertise on setting up. This could include things with company logos, etc. So even when employees are at home, they are still part of the company they belong. Great comment.
That's a super insightful comment. And actually, it's something that is happening in some way or the other. We are having conversations with especially companies that are, obviously at the edge of, managing super talent. They recognize, that they have to provide high performance environments for work also at home. So they are helping in the design, and they are helping also in the financing to their employees. It's relatively new. It always has some logistic aspects that need to be sorted out, but it makes all the sense, because hybrid work, it's real. And we don't want our employees to lose productivity or to lose focus or to lose a healthy environment when they are working at home. So that is happening, and it's a great comment.
So Patricia was from your team was commenting here, or was making a comment to Karine, saying that that during COVID lockdown, CBRE launched a portable table with CBRE logo, as in your comment, that you could use in different places. I'll send you a video. She's saying. Okay,
well said, Patricia. It's a good example.
Yeah, that those are the how-tos that I really love. So Adolfo, thank you so much for being here. Just let's redo your 4 Ps: people, properties, places,
and planet. Let me phrase it the way we phrase it in our vision. Together, we analyze people's needs and behaviors, in order to create places, great places, that will transform the properties and will impact the planet in a positive way.
Oh, that's fabulous. Okay, with the 3 I's, of course.
Of course, that's the 3 tools that
Great.
people and the people we work with, our clients, will use to make an impact.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you to all of you. Just remember that you can follow Adolfo. Of course, you can follow CBRE, that we leave the at CBRE Spain, España. That's their page on LinkedIn. And thank you, Adolfo, again, for being here.
Thank you, Mariana.
It was a pleasure.
It's been a great pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thanks.